Welcome to another episode of The Breakdown. Our next guest, I feel like I'm going to have to do some tallying. I'm going to have to do some math because I feel like historically, Dr. Dwayne Brad, I think, has been the guest who's appeared the most on the show. But I think that might be upended after today because I'm very, very excited to welcome back to the program again. Um, and I'm not going to do the full bio today because that always takes like 5, 10 minutes to just get through this gentleman's resume and list of accomplishments. So if you want to go find one of the old episodes, it's all there. But I'm very excited to welcome back to the program former Deputy Premier of Alberta, former Minister of I think just about everything, Thomas Lukaszuk. Thomas, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. And Dwayne Brad, by the way, doctor, if you're listening, don't feel threatened. I love listening to you on this show.
I'm going to be trying to get him back right away too, because it occurred to me in just trying to keep up with the torrent that is Alberta politics. We haven't had let's sit down and sort of digest the volume of it with a very smart person. So I'm going to be reaching out to Dr. Brad.
Awesome.
If you're listening to this episode, Dr. Brad, please say yes. Not what we're here to talk about today, though. You made a lot of news, sir. You've been getting yourself some headlines. Some people I can't turn on CTV News right now or any of the other news stations without somebody going "Oh, that Thomas Lukaszuk." So let's get into it. But I want to do this in I'm hoping a slightly different way. Obviously, we're here to talk about the referendum question, the petition. But before we get into that piece and all the nuts and bolts and what happens next and all of that, I mean, you have you have businesses. You are a businessman now. You have a long and storied political career. What makes a person go, "Hey, the political climate's worse than it's been in almost ever in Alberta," without going back to the Eberhard days. I'd like to jump back into it now. Because while you're not running for office, you're certainly a big part of the political conversation in the province. So what made you decide that you wanted to try to pursue this referendum issue?
Sure. So let's make a couple things perfectly clear. Yes, no, I am not running for office, and I have no plans. As a matter of fact, turned down an offer to run during the last federal election. And chose to assist somebody else. So that's number one. Number two, this truly isn't politics because it's nonpartisan. I've been so lucky to pull together a group that is working with me as forever Canadian on this file, which some of them are former politicians or organizers from very far left that make NDP look like right-wingers. And then we have very far right individuals. One of them is one of the originating fathers of the Reform Party of Canada. So it's totally nonpartisan. Several reasons. One reason is that, and I don't want to sound sappy, but it is true. There isn't a day in my life that I don't appreciate Canada and being Canadian. And that's because I came here from communist Poland as a teenager, not speaking a word of English, escaping a brutal regime over there with my mom and my brother, and Canada. It surpassed any of our expectations as a host country, as a friendly, welcoming country that allowed us to start a new life. And hopefully pay back our dues to this country. And I know that there are millions of people out there who would give up anything to be Canadian. We often don't appreciate how Canada is viewed from outside as a beacon of hope, stability, and normalcy. So that's number one, the emotional side of it. Second side is from the economic perspective. These conversations about separatism, however unrealistic they may be, they actually cause harm. And we saw this in Quebec during their talks and referenda on separatism. Business and investment virtually evaporated from Quebec. And I always use this example why Bank of Montreal's headquarters are in Toronto right now. They literally packed up and left Montreal. We saw this with Brexit, where Prime Minister Johnson thought like Danielle Smith, he can play politics. Well, he never thought that it passed, and the economy in UK has never been the same again. The entire financial sector moved to Germany and to France. And we see this today, every day in northern Spain and the Basque region, where it's one of the most impoverished places because nobody wants to invest. So there is economic damage when businesses and investment looks at a country, and there is one province that is toying with the idea of separating business and money like stability. They simply don't invest. And we saw Miss Nancy Southern, owner and CEO of ATCO, who already indicated that she's seeing the negative impact of this narrative. So that's second one. Third one, I guess I have four. Third one is that I believe that any conversation that is about the future of Canada, because this is not only about Alberta, this is about all of Canada, has to be led by Canadians who actually give a damn about the future of Canada as a whole. And it has to be a conversation premised on facts, laws, and realistic information, not disinformation or political spin. And lastly, I don't discount the dissatisfaction or anger that there may be among those who support separatism, that they're not happy about Alberta's role in the Confederation, or do we get a fair deal or not. Even though a lot of these emotions are not based on facts, but nonetheless, those are real emotions, and I respect that. But I firmly believe that the Premier of Alberta has venues where she can negotiate those things. For example, our transfer formula, equalization formula, has been put in by Prime Minister Harper, a conservative prime minister, and has never been changed since. He ran on the equal elected ineffective Senate. Well, he never has reformed it either. So it doesn't matter who is in Ottawa. It matters how we negotiate. But there are tables where premiers meet with prime ministers. There are tables where ministers meet with their counterparts. That's where negotiations take place. But they should never be with a gun held to Canadians' sort of proverbial heads, saying, if I don't get it my way, I'm separating it. I'm moving away. We didn't like when Quebec was doing it to us, and we don't want, and we shouldn't be doing it to others. So I don't want this veiled threat of separatism to be used for political gain, because that's exactly what it is. Instead of focusing on Alberta issues, and God knows there are many of them, or instead of negotiating in good faith, frankly, like all the premiers are, with the exception of Saskatchewan and Alberta, we choose to enter into this political standoff, which is not doing anybody any good. And I don't think anybody will argue that we are living in some of the most turbulent times in the world. Our best friend has turned out to be not so good. We have to forge new alliances, military ones, develop new markets for our goods. This is not the time to be dividing ourselves internally. I don't care who is in Ottawa, but our federal government should be able to focus on the international goals, and simply playing actually into our adversaries' hands by destabilizing our country, by weakening our democratic institutions, is not doing any good for Alberta and for the rest of Canada. So that's what motivated me. Maybe not in that order, but all at once.
You gave me so much to play with there, sir. I want to challenge you on one thing, because I think it does kind of highlight the extreme, if you will, nature of the situation. You called it a nonpartisan issue, but to me, it is still to some degree partisan, because you've got the on one side you've got the separatists or the seditionists, whatever we want to call them. I have other words that I could use, but I do try to keep the show PG-13. And on the other side you have the Canadians. But I think that what's striking about the partisanship that's involved in this particular equation is it is the separatists, the seditionists versus Canadians. And on the side of the Canadians, you have that diverse range of people who are on the far left, people who are on the far right, people who are in the middle, but they all still count themselves as Canadians. They still love Canada. And on
Sure.
the other side, you have this smaller group, and they are smaller, let's be clear, of folks that are their only shared value is I would like to maybe be the king, please. Or maybe I would like to grovel at the feet of the orange guy down south. But that's it. It is to me it is a very stark illustration on how certain issues, the Overton window has moved so far because this issue is so far off to the side that the vast majority of reasonable people can look at it and go, "Well, this is stupid." But you have this group of other people who are saying, "No, we just want to leave," and many of them, and this is why I use the term seditionists, are openly advocating to join the United States. So that to me meets the definition of sedition that I read in Webster's. But I want to talk also. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Am I wrong?
Well, I agree with you. The partisanship in that lies in the fact that most of those individuals who are promoting sedition or separation, whatever you choose to call it, and who are on that bandwagon, tend to be members of or supporters of the UCP party or now the Republican Party. So that's sort of where they come from. And that's part of the reason why our premier is dancing this dangerous dance that she's dancing is because she can't afford to lose him. So she's passing legislation to appease them, to make things easier for them, because she knows that if they don't support her, if they set up their own party, and by the way, they just registered a party called Alberta Party, that will cause a problem to Danielle Smith. So it is in essence a partisan issue. But I can tell you on our side, Forever Canadian side, uh, I have people who were not friends of mine politically. I have people now involved who frankly didn't talk to me because they didn't like me either personally or they didn't like my politics or whatever the case may be. But they're saying, here, let's work together. So it's actually for me personally, it's a very nice feeling because I'm sort of rekindling old relationships, or with either like-minded or adversaries. But this is what's uniting us. They see this as a nation building exercise, but also they see the irrationality behind this separation thing. Not only is it not attainable legally, because Alberta is in a much different position from a perspective of law than Quebec or Newfoundland for that matter, because of how we came about as a province into being, but also the logistics of it. Nobody ever answers to the fact that we would have to have our own embassies all over the world. We may not have access to the ports in Canada. We may not have access to the highways and rail lines. We may not be able to use our airports and NAV Canada for flying airplanes. And the list, and the military, and the list sort of goes on and on. For some reason, there is an assumption among separatists that we will keep what's best: Canadian currency, Canadian passport, Canadian citizenship, Canadian ports, Canadian highways, Canadian banking systems, Canadian everything, except what we don't want, and we will keep for ourselves. Maybe a little bit of a crude analogy, but it is very descriptive. It's like getting divorced and fighting your spouse on taking half the house and custody of children or everything, but say, but let's remain friends with benefits. I will still show up once in a while and enjoy, sort of the pleasant aspects of our relationship. Life doesn't work that way. If you want to go through a divorce, even if it was legally possible, you can't say, but I'm keeping this and this and that. It will be up to Canadians to decide what we're willing to share with Alberta. So, there is very little logical cohesion. But nonetheless, you know what? They're determined, and not deterred by facts.
Yeah, and I think that's a key characteristic that I think is really important to highlight because they lie. I mean that's just they are misleading people. I mean, I've watched some of the live streams of the various organizations that are advocating for separatism, and there's all kinds of factual falsehoods that are embedded in, and all kinds of, as you said, flawed assumptions. that are baked into their arguments, and that is to me not a good faith conversation. I want to explore a little bit before we get into the nuts and the bolts of the campaign that you've initiated here. Um, the the one of the things that I found striking, here's how I'm going to come at this. And you talked about Danielle Smith trying to walk the fine line of appeasing everybody. I watched the town hall that she did with Mitch Sylvester and Scott Sear. And the conversation, I mean, Mitch Sylvester, he's one of the people who's most strongly advocating for separation. He goes way back with TBA. He goes way back with the Alberta Prosperity Project. Scott Sear is a fascinating individual. As I say that to avoid any kind of legal problems. But uh, at one point, it was a bold choice, I think, to let Mitch Sylvester MC the evening, because he ended the evening by saying to people, okay, how many people want to separate? And there was a good number of the people in that crowd who are a very small sampling and not representative of Albertans en masse, for the record. But there was a good, chunk of who were there specifically to have that conversation. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. Woo. And then Danielle Smith was like, okay, and what about my pitch? And there was like one guy in the back that was like, it might not suck. And that was it. Like, she's lost the support on this issue. And I think that one of the things that I'd like to get your thoughts on is, because the folks advocating for separatism are so single-mindedly passionate about this issue being the panacea to all their woes. Um, do you think Smith can put the toothpaste back in the tube on this one, or is it going to come back and is is she in trouble?
He's in trouble. And actually, it's Kenny who started this process. We have to go back a little, but when there was a strong anti-vaccination movement, COVID vaccination movement, and take a look at the names. Many of those names who are supporting now separation are the same individuals who were, Dr. Modry would be one of them in front of legislature. And even now, for example, the legal counsel for Alberta Prosperity Project, Mr. Rat, a lawyer, if you look at his social media streams, he's still posting anti-vax things and claiming interesting medical non-facts on his stuff. So there is an overlap of individuals who sort of are anti-establishment, and they just want to rock the boat, who are not bothered by science or facts in any way or form. So Jason Kenney, to appease him, he created this unique piece of legislation called the Citizens Initiative Act, saying, well, if you want me to do what I don't want to do, make me do it, and then I will. And so he created this act that said you need 20% of all eligible electors to sign your petition, which is roughly 600,000 people in 90 days. And then if you force me to do what I don't want to do, I will do it for you. I sort of call it the Pontius Pilate approach to governing. Here is all the knives and daggers, go and do your dirty work, but I'm washing my hands off, even though I enabled you to do it. During Kenny time, nobody used this act, maybe because they were scared off by this 600,000 signatures proposition, or maybe there wasn't a leader, who knows. Comes along Danielle Smith as a premier. Now she has this pressure for separation, and let's be clear. This pressure is not only from the outside. Those are her party members and her caucus members, some of whom cabinet ministers, who are pushing for some form of separation. So what does she do to appease him? She passes Bill 54 that makes it even easier for separatists to have a referendum. But she also develops this phrase, which I refer to as a word salad, because it means nothing. And it has no bearing in law. And that is that Alberta will be a sovereign province in United Canada. Well, again, going back to a marriage, that is like saying to you, I'm single within the confines of my marriage, right? It makes no sense. Either you're part of Canada or you're sovereign, but you can't be both. So she's sort of flying this. She wants to be on both sides. and sort of straddle this. But she also wants to use this for two reasons. A, as a distraction, because while we're talking about this, we're not talking about healthcare scandals. We're not talking about emergencies, private schools, public schools, coal mines. So it's a distraction. And second thing is she uses it as a as a sort of a gun to hold against Ottawa. Recently she said, if you see rise of separatism in Alberta, blame it on Ottawa. No, blame it actually on the legislation you just passed, enabling for this to happen. As a premier, who, like any cabinet minister, swore an oath of allegiance to His Majesty and to Canada, de facto, take a position. But you can't have the benefit of both. So she's trying to stay alive. She needs to keep both ends happy. And there are, severely normal, pragmatic people in UCP party that want nothing to do with this. So now, how do I keep them both happy? So, she developed this phrase and hopes that it goes away. But I think what she will do is she will call an early election, saying, I need a mandate, and try to clean her caucus out of those individuals. But she has another problem. She has now the Republican Party of Alberta, which is stealing votes from her. I understand on Saturday there will be an announcement that the Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta is being reconstituted. So they will be nipping at her from the left and from the right, and she can't afford to lose any seats. Because, as you know, in Calgary, several of the MLAs, including Mr. Ameri, the Minister of Justice, just won by a handful of votes. They can't lose any votes. So she is singularly focused on staying in power and being a premier at the expense of Alberta, our business in Alberta, and Canadian unity.
Do you think that Smith should have learned from Kenny's mistakes? Because, there's two pieces here. One of them is everybody in the province, I think, who follows politics, watched Jason Kenney sitting down beside the drapes and playing with matches and going, I can play with the matches and not set the drapes on fire. I can play with the matches and not set the drapes are on fire. And to me, the thing to do would be, I'm not going to play with matches near the drapes. That would be the lesson, perhaps, to take out of that, among many. But another one is Jason Kenney tried to placate both sides. It did not work for him. If anything, it hastened his downfall. Danielle Smith is trying to placate both sides, and she's almost at the point now. For context, today's July 2nd when we're recording this. And I watched part of her press conference today where she was announcing the expansion of the Alberta Provincial Police Force. And she was asked explicitly if she would sign your petition. And her response was, I'm going to just throw all of the words at the wall. None of them will be yes. None of them will be no. And Albertans will make, I don't want to presuppose, Albertans will make decisions.
Will you be signing or endorsing Thomas Lukaszuk's petition for Alberta to declare its official policy to remain in Canada, and why or why not?
I'm going to let the various processes play out. I understand that the Chief Electoral Officer affirmed the question that had been put forward by Mr. Lukaszuk, and so we'll see if he's able to get the requisite number of signatures. I gather he submitted it under the old rules, so I think he needs 293,000 signatures. So I'll wait and see if he's able to accomplish that.
Instead of saying, yeah, you know what, there's a referendum coming and is asking whether or not Alberta should stay in Canada, I believe that we should, so I'm going to sign the petition. Instead of saying that, she offered up a bunch of words, and I suspect that what happens is both those severely normal Albertans that you were talking about, who are members of the UCP, go, what the hell is that? And the people who are the separatists, who are the members of the UCP, are looking at that and going, what the hell is that? And I don't know that she's doing anything other than digging a bigger hole for herself. You have spent decades in politics. What do you think?
Well, she is. Jason Kenney learned a hard lesson, whereas at the end he had to say that the lunatics took over the asylum. Comes in Danielle Smith, that the lunatics endorse. She brings in a few more lunatics. But you have to remember that you can never be lunatic enough for the lunatics, that they will always push the boundary. And that's where she sort of painted herself into a corner. Now, with respect of the petition, I would fully expect the Premier of Alberta to sign this petition. And if she truly is against separation, I don't believe her words. I will believe her actions. So signing the petition is one small step. But she is proclaiming Bill 54, which was designed to help the separatists to reach the threshold of signatures and all that. Oddly enough, on July 4th, the American Independence Day, there are 365 days in a year. She could have picked any one. She picked the symbolic day of American Independence Day, again, as a little, dog whistle for the separatists. But, why proclaim it? Or perhaps she should make sure that these now relaxed rules for referendum should also apply to me, who is not vying for separation, but is vying for unity. So her actions are very clear. Has she learned anything from Jason Kenney? Tracking her political career and having sat across the aisle from Danielle Smith and answering as a deputy premier most of her questions for years, I can say with all due respect and confidence that Danielle Smith does not learn from political experience. Danielle Smith, I once referred to her, and maybe not flattering, but I cannot think of a better analogy. She's a bit of a political magpie. She picks up shiny objects that will get her to the next day. And next day, she will find another shiny object. So if you think that appeasing your base will be actually saying that chemtrails are real and maybe Pentagon is spraying Alberta, she'll say it, because it'll keep a certain group happy. When another group comes out and says, Premier Smith, you're crazy, when you say things like that, she will say, well, yes, I didn't research it enough. If being Cherokee or Ukrainian for one day and then the next day, carries the day, she will say what she has to say to get her through the day. But at the end of the day, this is not a ideology. It is not a cohesive political tangent on which to govern the province, but it is simply appeasing these fractured groups of support one at a time.
Let's talk about the impetus for the question to begin with. I mean, you talked about your reasons at the start of the show. What made you go, you know what, I'm going to beat these guys to the punch?
It's actually funny. And if anybody says Lukaszuk is crazy, I will concur with them. Because my mind works in different ways. And it was literally about 2:00 in the morning. And I was either awake or woke up. And this thought crossed my mind because, I know how legislation works in general. I haven't actually read that specific act. But usually the way processes like that work is that when multiple applications are filed, they are usually reviewed in the order in which they were filed. And the first one that is approved, that's where the review ends because we have a winner, and that's it. So next morning, I called a colleague of mine who is a constitutional lawyer, very seasoned, respected lawyer in Edmonton. And I said, tell me if I'm crazy, but take a look at this act because I actually read the act in the morning. Am I correct in assuming that the application that is filed first and meets all the legislative requirements and constitutional requirements will be the application that carries the day? And my friend got back to me and says, no, you're 100% right. So I went to a bank, withdrew 500 Canadian dollars in 100 Canadian dollar bills, walked myself to Elections Alberta, filled out the application, and I filed it. And my application was first. It met all the legal requirements. Hence, it was approved by Elections Alberta, which means that anybody can file additional applications, but they simply will not be approved because there already is one. The law clearly says that there can only be one question on a given subject matter asked at a time, and additional questions or similar questions cannot be asked for 5 years. So once you get that spot, you're blocking all others for 5 years. So that's exactly what I did. And I'm asked often, why is it that the pro-separatists never file theirs? And I can't read their minds. But two things come to mind. Number one, I think they know that they need the help of these relaxed rules coming forward on American Independence Day, because they don't have the confidence that they could actually raise that bigger number of signatures. I do. I don't think there's going to be a problem playing by the old rules. But the other question that comes to mind is that if you want to start a country and you want to govern a new country and you want to enter into international politics, you should know how to file a petition. That should be a skill set that should be probably an entry level to becoming a prime minister or a president of a new country.
So let's get to the question. So what is the wording of your question?
Should Alberta remain in Canada?
I mean, that's
simple.
Brevity is the source of many things.
Sure, it has to be according to the rules, it has to be a binary question, yes or no question. And in the opinion of the elections commissioner, it should not be a question that requires any interpretation. It has to be very simple, very understandable. So it meets that criteria. Now, the importance of the fact that we're leading with that question is that we will build the entire campaign based on facts. We will dispel a lot of these assumptions that, you will be able to have dual citizenship, Alberta and Canadian, because all of that is up to Canada to decide. So we will simply lay out facts on the table. But I can tell you, judging by the response I'm getting right now, I went to a baseball game yesterday in Edmonton, and I kid you not, people were just coming up and saying, where can I sign? Where can I sign? So I have to tell everybody, hold on, we don't get to do this yet. But there is a lot of desire. I think what we tapped into is Albertans being tired of being told how unhappy they are and that they should be even more unhappy. This is something positive. This is something nation building. And Albertans are looking for political leadership that is positive, constructive, that is telling us, things may not be perfect. There's room for improvement. We can negotiate with other provinces and Ottawa. But at the end of the day, damn, do we have a good country, and do we want to stay in that country?
I mean, that's the thing that's so striking about this to me, is that you've managed to take, there was a lot of when Danielle Smith introduced the rules, there were a lot of people going like, oh, this is about separation.
Sure.
And you take a look at the comments that she made during her leadership race, where she was very, very clear that the Alberta Prosperity Project and Dennis Mraiche was her plan B if Ottawa didn't do exactly what she wanted. So she's been open to the idea of separation for quite some time. And
they went as far as they actually flew to Washington, Dr. Mraiche and others. And in Washington, D.C., they were negotiating the terms of Alberta becoming a 51st state. Now, let's be clear here. In politics, nothing happens within the nod of the Premier's office, especially as monumental as this. Dr. Mraiche is a good friend of Danielle Smith. Dr. Mraiche is the one who was negotiating on behalf of, what are those two reverends or pastors from Calgary called, with a Polish last name,
Artur
Pawlowski. Dr. Mraiche was the one who was negotiating an immunity for those individuals, because Danielle Smith didn't know that as a premier she cannot grant immunities. So he is a very close friend of the premier. So he doesn't fly to Washington negotiating a merger between Alberta and the United States without her at least having a knowledge of it.
Well, and she didn't condemn it. And I think that's again
right.
Goes towards, at what point does the leader of a province stop playing politics and start demonstrating leadership? Because it would have been very, very easy for her to say, Dr. Mraiche and his black-hatted friends have no standing whatsoever to have this conversation. And if the United States government chooses to engage with them, they're only showing how little they understand about how our process works. This is silly. It's never going to go anywhere. She didn't say anything even close to that.
See, there are two theories of leadership. And there is one that says, find a parade and just go in front of it. And now it looks like you're leading the parade, right? The other one is that often you have to do actually unpopular things, things that people initially don't want, but you have to show them the facts and lead them in a different direction, because even though it may not seem apparently as the right thing to do, in a long term, it will be the right thing to do. Now, which one is easier? It's easier to jump in front of an existing parade and pretend that you created it and you're leading it than making unpopular decisions. But, you put a referendum out and say, who wants a tax increase? Nobody will vote for it. But sometimes you have to increase taxes if you want to run a country. And that's where, true leaders shine, when they can take maybe initially unpopular position, and then 10, 20 years later, people say, this guy had vision and guts to actually bring this forward, and thank God he did it, because imagine where we would have been if he or she didn't do that. I don't see, unfortunately, and I hate to always have to speak negatively about her, because she may be a very nice lady as a friend, but I see zero leadership. You want chemtrails, you got chemtrails. You want anti-vax, you got anti-vax. You want, get rid of vaccinations right now and make people pay for it, you get that. You want private schools, you get that. There is no ideology, there is no vision, there is no sort of a plan where, under my premiership, Alberta is going to be in 10 years. No, it's just let's survive one day at a time, making those individuals, groups happy. And that is not leadership. And ultimately this province will pay for it. Because, there will be a next premier, and it won't be me, of this province, who will have to put this Humpty Dumpty together again.
Well, I think that's part of the piece that I suspect is why you're getting the response to the petition and people wanting to sign. Danielle Smith seems to, more often than not, if not always, govern from a place of generating anger or generating fear. There's always somebody who's attacking us. There's always somebody who's trying to subvert us, and we have to take these unconstitutional, in some cases, steps in order to prevent these attacks. And this isn't that. This is you're wandering dangerously close to politics with this, because it's giving people the opportunity to say, you know what? No, I am proud to be Canadian, and I want to stand up for that. That's an easy thing that I can do. And I think that's if I was to speculate, I would say that's probably why the buy-in has been to this point so significant, because people are tired of the rage inducing strategies. This is just like, hey, we're cool, right?
And at a time, and we the voters are partly to be blamed for that. Because we elected this government, but that's okay, buyer's remorse. But we need to pay attention to news, to facts, and find them yourself from credible sources. So in a week where the Minister of Finance announces a surplus budget, this is the only province that has a surplus budget. In a week where the Energy Minister says that this year Alberta will produce and sell more oil than ever in the history of this province, literally in the same week, there is a ship in British Columbia loading Alberta's natural liquefied gas and taking it to Asia. We are claiming that we are hard done by, and that the rest of the country is blocking us, and yet we are reaching all these high marks. Now, could we sell more? Possibly. Will we? Let's negotiate it. But you don't make friends by threatening them. You don't go, as Alberta Prosperity Project does, you don't talk to British Columbia and say, look, if they don't allow us to use their port and their highways to access tidewater, and actually we will landlock them and separate them from the rest of Canada, because they have to ship their goods through Alberta to get to Ontario and Quebec. Maybe, even though it's not very effective, you can play hardball negotiations like that with a foreign country, and that doesn't go very far. But for goodness sakes, you don't deal with your own countrymen and women with your own country that way within Canada.
Well, I think, and that's one of the reasons why when I saw that the question had been approved, I was like, "Hey, Thomas, so you're coming on the show, right?" Because it's a positive story, and I mean, this is the thing that I find myself excited about with this, because with the breakdown, we spent a lot of time responding to the things that the government does. And when the government does horrible things, or things that happen in Alberta politics, and when those things are horrible things, then we have to go, well, that's a horrible thing. And I can tell you, there's no shortage of times where people are like, can you do a happy story? And I'm like, I would love to. So here it is. And that's fantastic. So the question's been approved.
Correct.
What are the next steps?
Okay, so now it gets sort of technical, but not complex. So now we are waiting till July 4th, not because we want to wave American flags, but that's the day Danielle Smith's Bill 54 gets proclaimed, which means it actually is put into effect. It becomes the law. Based on that, the Chief Electoral Commissioner of Elections Alberta will have to make a decision whether my application, which was filed prior to July 4th, will benefit from the rules that Bill 54 brings, which is lower number of signatures, longer time, and much more relaxed money-raising rules, or do I have to obey the previous rules? That is something that he gets to decide on, and I can either agree or disagree with it. If I disagree, there's a process of challenging that decision. Having said that, I am not hung up on the number of signatures. As I said earlier, we'll just get them, and that's all there is to it. So once he decides those rules, we get to react to his decision. Second thing I have to do is I have 30 days to report to the Elections Alberta who my chief financial officer will be. One has to be appointed. Once I appoint the chief financial officer, the clock starts ticking. The 90 days or 120 days start ticking. So during that time, I have to collect those signatures. Now, the process of collecting signatures is not an easy one because it's not an online petition. So it's a paper and pen petition. And you, for example, can volunteer and collect signatures from your family and friends. But in order for you to do that, I have to register you with Elections Alberta saying that this gentleman is going to be one of my scrutineers collecting signatures. Because once you have a page filled up with signatures, you will have to sign an affidavit saying, I saw these people sign these, I'm a witness to those signatures. So it's a good process. I'm glad it is, because there's very little room for monkey business with, adding fake names or anything like that. But it's very onerous. So we will have about 90 days to get through that process. And then we submit this application, this pile of petition pages back to Elections Alberta. They will audit it. So they will pull out certain names from the petition and make sure that those people who signed it are actually electors in Alberta, which means they're over 18. They lived in Alberta for more than 6 months and are Canadian citizens. And once the audit is completed, this petition then lands on, not in itself. The Premier will never see the names and last names who signed it, but a report will land on the Premier's office desk, and she will have two choices, neither of which I anticipate she will like. Because either A, she makes this a referendum question at the next available election time. We probably will miss the municipal elections coming up, so it will be the next provincial election. Or she can put that question in front of the legislature, where all the MLAs get to vote on it. That would actually prevent a referendum. But I'm not sure if Premier Smith is going to like that option, knowing that in her own caucus, there are members who may stand up and say, we are pro-separatists and we don't want to adopt unity as official government policy.
That would be wild.
Yeah, if I was Danielle Smith, that would not be the option that I would entertain.
Now, I'm curious, because one of the things that Danielle Smith has said is we will be having a bonus referendum election of some kind. She's got this Alberta Next panel full of videos that are reminiscent, I'm sure, of certain periods in your home country, where she said we're going to have a referendum. We're going to do this. Taxpayers are going to pay for Alberta Smith and her cohorts to travel the province and do town halls, and then we're going to have some arbitrary decision about what these referendum questions are going to be. And I'm sure that they're not going to be the 6 that are posted there. Is it possible that this referendum question could be added into that mix?
If she chooses not to take that legislative option of a vote in legislature, she will have no choice. She will have to put that question to a vote, to a referendum vote. This panel that you're telling me about, I actually took a peek at this. I didn't participate in it yet, or maybe won't, in this questionnaire that she has online. My goodness, is it ever leading you towards one direction? This actually, you mentioned my home country way back then, communist Poland. There was a joke at that time how the system worked, and the system worked like this. Nate, I have two sets of pajamas. One is striped, one is checkered. I'm taking the checkered one. Which one do you want? That's exactly how it works. When we set up an independent police force, what do you like about it the most? Well, there isn't one box when I say it actually sucks, I don't want any of it. You just have to choose the one you like the most. It is offensive, not only to all Albertans, but to democracy. We have become very forgiving, and we are starting to sort of accept those things as if they were normal. And I am very, very saddened that there are some prominent individuals who are on that panel, and I know that they were not involved in creating this website and these questions, because they were announced as panel members on the same day as this questionnaire. And I would hope that those individuals on that panel will have the integrity to say, I don't want any part of this. I hope they have the integrity to step down from that panel.
I don't disagree. There's a couple of names, I'm not going to say them, but there's a couple of names on the panel where I was like, oh, that's an interesting twist. And then I did the same thing where I checked out the website. And to me, anytime that you're going to say we're going to do consultation, but first you have to watch this like 8-minute video, it's mandatory. You can't click past it. There are going to be lies in these videos, and there are demonstrable faults that have been documented in these videos. And then we're going to ask you questions that are very much like the pajama question, where it's not, do you want this? Yes or no. It's, what do you love the most about the singular choice that we're presenting you? And that's not consultation. It's bad corporate training, and it's sales pitch. I am certain I can think of at least 2 names on that panel that they had no idea that this was the branding exercise that
so now my challenge to them, and you know who you are, is step down from this panel, because you're fronting that website. That's part of the research that you're conducting, and you will be incorporating into your report. The question that really, and that's probably because I'm an immigrant myself, but the one that proposes taking away benefits from immigrants. Well, that 100% defies the reality. Number one, if you look at statistics, first-generation Canadians have a much higher employment rate than the rest of our population. Why? Because they work crappy jobs, and usually 2 or 3 of them to make ends meet. There are no extra benefits available to immigrants that are not available to other Canadians. And refugees, yes, they get some assistance up front, but those are usually federal benefits that they receive. But see, it's creating this narrative that, again, we're victimized by immigrants, by Canadian immigration policy, whereas less than 1 year ago, and anybody who wants to play a YouTube video, feel free to do it, Premier Smith was chastising Ottawa for not letting more immigrants into Alberta because she wanted to grow Alberta to 10 million people by 2030.
That's why I've said, let's have an aggressive target to double our population. I'm going to put this out there because I've said that in the throne speech. And I want people to understand how important that is. We have to be that bastion of liberty, and people are going to want to come here, and we want to embrace them, and we want to be able to build this place out so that we can actually have the political clout in Alberta that we deserve. Because right now, we're being treated as a junior partner by Ottawa. And if we end up with the strongest economy, we'll double our oil production.
You want to go from rough numbers, you probably know the number better than me, 4.7 million, roughly?
We're almost at 5 million. We'll
okay.
5 million.
So you want to double it to 10 million?
Yeah, I do.
Yep.
Well, you can't have a cake and eat it too.
I just find, like, to me, that there's these certain benchmarks of how catastrophic things are getting. Like, this is when we know that we're in a lot of trouble. This is when we know that things are getting really, really bad. The erosion of guardrails. I mean, the changes that she made to the Conflict of Interest Act, that was like, whoa, 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 this is a problem. The consolidation of power, whoa, 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 this is a problem. But when the punching down on LGBTQ2S plus youth, and then the clip of the video, the interview that she did with Juno News, we're definitely not True North anymore, where she said, if you take a look at the housing crisis, if you take a look at the cost of living crisis, and if you take a look at the healthcare crisis, this is all directly a result of too many immigrants, you guys. I'm paraphrasing, but that is, like, I'm not paraphrasing wildly.
There was a very good reason why we were doing that Alberta's Calling campaign. We were calling to those who are unemployed Canadians in other parts of the country to come to Alberta. What we didn't anticipate was that the federal government was going to completely let off all controls of all streams of immigration at that time. Temporary foreign workers, asylum seekers, international students, as well as the other immigration streams. I think that 1 year period, instead of a normal amount of immigration and newcomers arriving, which would be about 1% of the population, so maybe around 400,000 people a year, at 1.8 million. And you've seen the result of it. The reason why housing prices have spiked, why food affordability has spiked, why affordability on every front has spiked, is just because if you have too many people chasing too few jobs, too few homes, and too little employment, you're just going to end up causing problems. So the federal government blew it.
Here is, I mean, it's, I guess, similar. It's a little different. They want jobs for their children.
Yep.
They want them to be able to go work at the Tim Hortons down the road,
Correct.
like they did when they were a kid. They want to be able to afford groceries. They want to be able to take their kids to the hospital and go through an emergency line when they're having a problem,
yep,
and be seen within a few hours. And they don't even view that, I think, as, oh, Danielle Smith is not spending enough on healthcare. They think there's too many people in line in front of them. And
I think there's legitimacy to that.
But that, to me, is like, once you go down that road, history's very, very clear, and it's not clear in a good way.
Scapegoating. Well, no, we have to be open and clear about it. I don't know why we are so scared to bring up history. I spend a lot of time with people much older than me who tell me that this is very reminiscent of Germany 1932-33. You find the minorities and you blame them for everything, right? And that's how it started. Holocaust did not start at Auschwitz. It started about a decade prior, that normalized all this and resulted in Auschwitz. And that is why, I'm doing what I'm doing. This is going to cost me a whole summer and fall, probably, campaigning. It's going to cost me personally a lot of income to do it. But, we need to stand up and we need to call it out. And that's exactly what I'm doing. These issues are critical. But the idea of separatism is one where we definitely have to draw a line and send a clear message. Not 600,000 signatures. Let's get a couple million signatures if we can, to send a clear message to the rest of Canada and the world that our unity as a country, our love for this country and everything it stands for, our appreciation for soldiers, Canadians that died fighting for this country, as recently as Afghanistan and as long ago as World War I, is not something that we are willing to just throw away because few individuals who are not happy, for whatever reason, are willing to fritter it all away.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I was thinking about I was reading a post yesterday from a historian who specializes in German history. And one of the things that they said is, I keep seeing all of these pictures of the, what is it, alligator Alcatraz, they're calling it in the States.
Yes.
And people are saying this is how the Holocaust started. I want to be very clear. This is several steps in. And that was like a very, very powerful, like, yeah, this is, and it requires of us, I think, to say, no, this is wrong. And that's what I love about this petition is that it says, no, we are Canadian.
And there's one more aspect that we need to talk about. And I should tell you, I actually will be sending out a letter today, an email, to all leaders within our First Nations, all chiefs, elders, and any and all groups, associations, and societies that are operated by First Nations. Because this whole conversation about separatism and Danielle Smith's allowance of this conversation to happen is a great affront to our First Nations. Now, I guess I'm a social studies teacher, so I get to do it. First Nations signed their treaties, not with Ottawa, but directly with the Crown, with Buckingham Palace. They had their treaties in place before 1905, when Prime Minister Laurier decided to create Alberta out of Canada. And these sort of arbitrary geographic lines between BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba are just that. They're political decisions, they're arbitrary, but they in no way have any bearing on treaties. As a matter of fact, First Nation treaties are supra-constitutional. They override the Constitution because they're signed directly with the Crown. So now, if you were to enter into this fantasy of separating Alberta from Canada, the separatist logic is we will simply give our First Nations money. They'll get more money out of pipelines and oil extraction, and they'll be happy. How insulting. Treaties are more than just money. They're land rights, they're ancestral rights. They incorporate cultural and religious and spiritual rights. It's a whole package. To come out and say to First Nations, don't worry, we'll pay you off and you'll be just fine, is ludicrous. And this is, I obviously am not First Nations, but this is where we all have to pull together and say, brothers and sisters, Canadians, we're in it together. And you will find that in my letter, I and our group will be offering assistance to First Nations if this ever ends up in court. We will seek intervener status because, again, it's like that poem, when they came for Jews, I wasn't Jew, I didn't care. When they came for workers, I was in labor movement, I didn't care. And then when they came for me, there was no one left to help me. We need to stick up for each other because this sort of picking us apart one by one is something we can't allow to happen.
The First Nations piece is so critically important because it is so poorly understood by so many people. And the disrespect. I mean, we just did a whole Canada Day special with Rebecca Thomas, which was a personal. I could go on about that. But the lack of knowledge that the average Albertan has about the treaties and the fact that they do supersede the formation of the provinces, and the treaty rights are not limited to just the space that's been set aside for reservations. There's hunting rights that go and fishing rights that go across the entire province, and
they straddle interprovincial boundaries. One thing, and that's sort of grade 6 social studies actually. And not that long ago, we celebrated Alberta's 100th birthday. In 1905, before 1905, we were part of Northwest Territories, both Saskatchewan and Alberta, part of Canada that way, and it became simply not manageable for Ottawa to manage the day-to-day operations over here, far, far west. You couldn't get here, other than by train, and that took days. So they decided to create, subnational orders of government to sort of manage the day-to-day. An Alberta Act was passed in Ottawa in Parliament, and the Saskatchewan Act was passed on September 1st, 1905. And they created these provinces. Obviously, they took a ruler and along surveyor's line drew these nice straight lines to create Alberta. They took the Rockies in our southwestern corner, and that's how arbitrarily this province was created. We must remember that Alberta never joined Canada. It was never a separate entity that joined Canada. We were simply carved out of Canada. And and even though this is as hypothetical as separation would be, but there is nothing preventing the federal government from rescinding the Alberta Act, because that's what brings us all together.
The other piece with the First Nations part that drives me bonkers is and again, I go back to the fact that when these folks are the separatist folks, when they're traveling the province and they're doing their traveling roadshow, they're misleading people. They're misleading the people that they are trying to get on side. They're misleading people on their own team. They're perpetuating a lot of myths and falsehoods to the people on their own team. So they're willing to intentionally or unintentionally lie to the people that they are most aligned with. And so, let's put that in a little box over here. And those same people are saying to First Nations folks, nah, it's cool. You can trust the white people this time. On behalf of white people, please don't trust us this time.
No. And First Nations are very wise.
Yes.
And they also have very good legal counsel, and I'm sure they're very very much alive to this issue. But for those who choose to travel the province and lie, we live in a free country. That's their prerogative. I blame the people who actually choose to pay money to go to their town hall meetings and listen to those lies without questioning them or contradicting, those lies. So that's, I don't blame the snake oil salesman. I blame the guy who's stupid enough to buy it, right? So that's one thing. But there comes a time where our political leaders, particularly the premier, should step in and say, no, not under my watch. And if it means end of her political career, you make those decisions. And, I'm not going to get on a soapbox, but, Doug Griffiths and I voted against Bill 10, the bill that was to really put gay LGBTQ kids in a horrible situation. And we voted against our own caucus because there are certain hills that are worth dying on. And I hope that Danielle Smith at least will consider this hill worth dying on. And I can tell you, there is life after politics. Staying in power is not the ultimate goal. But it seems at this point in time, they will do and say anything to anyone in order to just stay in power.
You teed me up for my last question, but I have one other thing that I want to throw in before I throw you my last question. What do people look for next? So if somebody is, you have some interest. If somebody is going, oh, I want to be one of those scrutineers for Thomas in Camrose, or I want to sign the petition, I'll drive to Thomas's front door. Don't drive to Thomas's front door. I'll whatever it takes. I want my name on that thing. Where should they be going when the starter gun goes off? Because I understand that there's some administrative processes that have to happen, but when the starter gun goes off, where do people need to be standing so they can hear it?
So what will happen is within the next couple of days or so, we will be launching our website. And the website will have a way for volunteers to register themselves, because that registration has to be forwarded onto Elections Alberta, which we will. So you will basically have to enter your contact information, your name, last name, your email, phone number, and address. We are bound by legislation to protect your private information. That's part of the process, so you don't have to be worried about submitting. Our website is super protected. And that's audited as well. So we have to make sure that we live up to the highest standards with maintaining information. But once you're registered, you then, on our behalf, can collect the signature. So I would say to you right now, stay tuned. Follow me on social media, on X, Lukaszuk AB, or on Facebook, or on Blue Sky. I will be informing you. But media has been exceptionally kind, including yourself. You will be promoting where the website is, and that will give an opportunity for anybody. And the fact is that, yes, we need as many volunteers as possible in every part of the province. And let's just blow this out of the water. Let's not worry about minimum number of signatures. If you love this country, if you're waving a Canada flag or enjoying the fireworks yesterday, if playing of our Canadian national anthem sort of stirs you up a little, sign the damn thing, and let's send a strong message. And that does not mean that you approve status quo. That does not mean that you're 100% happy with the way things are. It means that you're Canadian first, and then us Canadians will sit down over time and we'll hammer things out like we always have.
Beautiful. I don't suppose do you have the domain name?
Yes, it'll be forevercanadian.ca.
Perfect. Excellent.
Yes.
So here's my last question for you, because like I said earlier, we're recording this on July 2nd, day after Canada Day. And Danielle Smith was asked in the press conference if she would sign the petition. And again, here's the thing. It costs her nothing other than integrity to not sign it. She doesn't have to say, I'm taking a position on this. She can just say, yeah, I think this is a question that should be asked. And she has not, as of yet, publicly committed, to my knowledge, that she will sign the petition. She's trying to do that straddling the both sides thing. And so here's the question that I have for you. Jason Kenney got himself into all kinds of trouble because he tried to appease everyone and not take clear public positions. He tried to word finagle and play politics more than provide leadership. Do you think the separation question is going to be Danielle Smith's COVID?
It could be. It could be. Unless she comes to the conclusion that in life, integrity is much more important than keeping your job. And we have seen examples of it. The former CEO of Alberta Health Services is a good example of it. Individuals during COVID who were administering vaccinations and putting themselves in harm's way. And we see many examples of people choosing integrity over a paycheck. This will be Danielle's opportunity to actually, in a way, vindicate herself, that she finally found a hill that is worth dying on. And, maybe she will actually gain more support doing that than she will lose on the other side. But if she chooses to do what Jason Kenney did and try to be everybody's friend, I think she will lose support on both sides. With these new parties forming now, she will have a difficult time if she doesn't pick one particular side, because they are growing increasingly frustrated. She's not giving any of them what they want, but she doesn't have the political will to say no.
Which is so bonkers to me, because it would be the easiest thing in the world for her to do. It would be the easiest thing in the world for her to just say, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go retire in Panama anyways. So I'm going to take a position, and my legacy, instead of being the person who emboldened separatism, will either be the person who led the charge on separatism or led the charge to make sure that Alberta stays in Canada. I mean, it's, to me, I struggle, Thomas. I do.
Well, but that's what happens. And we see this over and over again. That's what happens when you stand for nothing. Right? If you don't have a clear ideology, she says she's a libertarian, and so does her tattoo on her arm say, but she's not. because I have never seen a premier centralize so much power in her office as she has. She is anything but a libertarian. She says she's a conservative, but she's not. The stuff that's happening with the story that you broke with Tylenol, the way she's spending money, the way she's creating more and more crown corporations and agencies. I would expect NDP to do that. Have 55 health authorities and 5 deputy ministers and a whole bureaucracy. That is not a conservative thing to do. So we established she's not a libertarian, she's not a conservative, for certain. Her spending, frivolous spending, definitely would indicate that. She sometimes she claims she's a social conservative, but sometimes she's not. One day she cries and she talks about her nephew that is LGBTQ and transgender, and the next day she comes out and passes horrendously harming legislation. So she will be whatever you want her to be, as long as it gets her through the day. And I think UCP members are starting to figure that out. And when we talk about UCP members, we tend to be focusing on that fringe, the lunatics, as Kenny called them. But I think the moderate, the average, the old PC people who joined the UCP, they're starting to notice it as well. So, I wish her as a person, I wish her the best. But as a premier, this is not the way to run a province. I simply don't think that she has the moral compass to make right decisions.
Do you have any tattoos, Thomas?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any tattoos?
No, actually, I don't. I don't have any tattoos, and they're trendy, and I like tattoos. When I was in legislature, I won't reveal who, but one of my chiefs of staff, always wears a suit and a tie, and was a sort of, very business-like sort of appearance individual. And one day we were traveling and we're staying at a hotel, and he used to say, I'm going for a swim at the hotel. And I said, I'll join you. I could actually use a swim after a long day as well. And I saw him in his swimming trunks, and this guy had tattoos literally from wrists all the way to his ankles. His entire body was tattooed. And I think it looks good. There are some beautiful tattoos out there, but no, I am not tattooed. But I definitely would not tattoo an ideology on my arm. Democracy is as it is, and we vote individuals into office. Often we don't have an inkling of who the person is, and we either get pleasantly or unpleasantly surprised. But in the case of Danielle Smith, we sort of knew what we got ourselves into. She sat on a school board in Calgary that had to be dissolved because of mismanagement. She wrote articles which I think were entertaining, but a little odd. She was on a radio show, and because of some of the stuff she was saying, her career ended early. She was a leader of the opposition, and so we had a good understanding what we're getting into, and we had some prime examples. Remember the infamous Lake of Fire?
Oh yeah.
She was a leader of the Wild Rose Party, and one of her caucus members stood up and make some horrible comments about the LGBTQ community. Now, what do you do as a leader of a party? You call a press conference and say, these comments are not acceptable. I will not have it in my caucus. They're offensive. On behalf of that member, I personally apologize to everybody whom these comments, hurt so badly. And then you deal with that member. And either you turf him out of caucus, which is what I would have done, or you bench him so deep in the House that he will never see the light of day again, and make sure he doesn't run again. No, she took the Donald Trump approach. There are good people and bad people on both sides, and the member was never reprimanded, right? So that shows you about integrity and the ability to make moral decisions. And I think we're living through the same thing again. I honestly believe that Danielle Smith is not a separatist. I don't doubt her affinity and loyalty to Canada. But at this point in time, it's convenient not to show it, so she's not showing it.
Yeah. I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to chat today, Thomas. I would encourage you after this thing is done, maybe you get yourself a little maple leaf somewhere. I got one right here.
Do you?
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
I got a big maple leaf right above my heart. My kids say like we can never leave the country now because if you go to the States, Donald Trump will put you in the.
Yeah, probably. And the ice will get you. You know what? I'll take that as a suggestion. It's something that I would wear very proudly.
There we go. Thank you so much for taking the time today, Chad, sir.
Thank
And
you.
I guarantee you're going to be getting follow-ups from me asking for more stuff once we get the ball rolling on this. So thank you very much.
And you know what? Thank you for all the work that you are doing.
No.
That shows integrity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And that's it for another episode of The Breakdown. As always, if you appreciate the kind of content that we're trying to produce here, we would love nothing more than if you thought about signing up to be one of our Patreon sponsors at www.patreon.com/thebreakdownab, where for just the price of a fancy cup of coffee a month, you can help us continue to produce this kind of content. Whether you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, in which case, maybe leave a review and a rating, or whether you're watching it on one of our streaming platforms, we want to say a big thank you to everybody who is part of the Breakdown's audience. And as always, take care of each other and keep the conversation going.